Welcome to Just Two Fans, a sports show about sports,
Obviously.
about life,
Because sports are life.
and about just whatever the hell we feel like talking about. So, let's go.
What is up, everybody?
Hi.
I'm Jamie Friedlander, and that smiling face is Eli Johnson.
Hi, I'm Eli, and I'm depressed.
Why are you depressed, buddy?
Because this whole episode, not the whole episode, but most of this episode, we are going to have to sit here and talk about a school that we don't like.
And we probably, spoiler alert, will talk about them fairly favorably, which is going to be painful. Yeah, it's going to be painful.
I don't want to do it.
There's no doubt about it.
I don't want to do it. This is how it is. Sorry, I'm adjusting my lighting because I was cleaning my apartment this week, and I did some dusting, and so my lights got a little crazy.
Way to go.
Well, got to keep the apartment clean.
It's fair.
For all the ladies that come over.
Oh, yes. I'm sure.
I can't get this light working. It's fine. I'll just be the dark boy.
Before we jump into our Washington and Washington State preview, which is going to take up most of the episode, we cannot ignore the realignment stuff that just keeps coming out.
We could.
But we're not going to.
We could ignore all of this and just talk about the things that we want to talk about. This is our show. The world is our oyster here.
That's
Jay.
true.
We can do whatever we want.
However, we are going to talk about realignment. I just want to start off by saying how sad this all is. We're getting all animated in our text chain that includes Chris Burkhart, who will rejoin the show at some point, I'm sure.
Eventually.
And it's all kind of exciting to think about all the things that this could turn into, but taking a step back and looking at it, this is just a really sad thing for college sports in general.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the great things about college sports was that regional rivalries, history, tradition, all that junk. And
it just seems to be going out the window.
Like I said last week, man, it's sad, or was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I was it's just sad, man, because it's all the stuff that made me fall in love with the sport are just oh no, but that doesn't play well on TV markets, so it's no longer important.
Yeah, the fact that this is getting all just bungled by TV deals it just really sucks.
Yeah, man.
It's not surprising. People have seen this coming for a long time.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
I don't think anybody expected the Pac-12 to die. This is
instantly too.
This is insane. the fact that the Pac-12 was in such a power position 15 years ago.
You can even go back 5.
Yeah.
When the Pac-12 was looking to expand and grab Texas Tech and TCU, and you can even go further than that when they refused to bring Texas and Oklahoma.
That's when this whole thing got bungled by the Pac-12.
But
they didn't bring in Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, even if they hadn't done that, whatever, and they bring in Texas Tech, TCU, whatever.
Here's the other thing.
4 years ago, this, we're not talking about this right now. That's it's a totally different landscape right now.
Yep.
And also, week 2 isn't an out of conference game.
Yeah, I mean there was an article by Heather Dinich today on ESPN that was really good, and it outlined it was about the Colorado move, but
yeah.
it went deeper into how the Big 12 kind of pulled this off, because the Pac-12 just bungled the whole thing. Because when Texas and Oklahoma left, the Big 12 was about to crumble. if the Pac-12 had called in those couple months following Texas and Oklahoma leaving, if the Pac-12 had called TCU, Texas Tech, Kansas State,
Yep.
Kansas, any of those schools, they would have left fast, like, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Like as fast as Colorado left the Pac-12.
Exactly. It would have been exactly like that.
Yep.
And they didn't do it.
Nope.
So the Pac-12 missed their chance to be in the position of power. And then the Big 12 swooped in and took that position and then is now coming in, taking Colorado. And by all indication, Arizona is soon to follow.
It's like 95% sure that Arizona's leaving as well.
I'd say it's even more. It's pretty much done. Is everything I'm reading tonight from reputable sources is Arizona's next. It would be shocking to me if Arizona State and Utah did not follow.
Yeah, and then, I mean, in all accounts that I'm seeing from fairly reputable sources is that the Big Ten is re-entering, well, at least the board of or the presidents and regents of the Big Ten are all okay with vetting or bringing or reintroducing the idea of Oregon and Washington coming into the fold.
They basically gave the commissioner of the Big Ten permission to explore expansion.
Yeah.
With specifically Oregon and Washington.
Which, I mean, at this point, they can get them on, like, cents for the dollars. Pennies on the dollar, you're getting Oregon and Washington.
Yeah, that's the question. That's the real, and everything I'm reading, and I've seen this again multiple times today, is Washington is tied at the hip to Oregon. Whatever Oregon does, Washington will follow.
Yeah.
Washington's not leaving if Oregon's not leaving. And so Oregon's really kind of the main driver there. If Arizona leaves, I think it's going to force Oregon's hand. I think right now there's a legitimate thought, maybe until tonight when it's pretty much apparent that Arizona's gone, but there was a legitimate thought that Oregon was going to potentially just stay in the pack with pennies on the dollar. Phil would fund the difference to the athletic department, and they would just dominate the Pac-12. And make the playoffs every year. It's the Clemson model.
The Clemson model, yeah.
Not great, right, just in terms of competition and everything, but it's not the worst thing in the world.
I mean, look at what Clemson's done, man. I mean, they outside
built a powerhouse.
The ACC has gotten a lot better, for sure.
I mean, at that point,
4 or 5 years ago, the ACC was awful.
Yeah, at that point, if you're Oregon, you're building a team that can play 3 games a year.
Yeah, exactly. That's all you need.
Washington, Oregon State, and a playoff game, and then you're in the national championship.
If you make deep playoff runs, with this team
every year,
you're going to get recruits.
Yeah, and then you're going to win.
Yeah,
because those recruits are then rested. They're not running through an SEC gauntlet. The Big Ten gauntlet is questionable of how much of a gauntlet it actually is until you get to the big dogs.
You're in.
Right. But, it's not a terrible model, and it keeps the Pac-12 alive. Now, Arizona leaving kind of blows this whole thing up. If one more chip falls, I think Oregon leaves, Washington leaves, and this whole thing gets jacked up. All along, we've talked about how it would be the 4 corner schools to the Big 12, which that appears to be well on its way to happening. Yeah. And then Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal to the Big 10. By all accounts, Stanford and Cal are not even being considered by the Big 10, which is a little surprising to me.
Especially because they're the Olympic sports, you're not going to get anything better out of those than those 2 schools, truly.
No, absolutely you won't. 100%.
Yeah.
Will not get any better than Stanford and Cal. Maybe UCLA.
Yeah. Outside of football, Stanford and Cal have some of the best athletics in the country.
I would say Stanford's the best athletic department from top to bottom in the country.
Yeah.
And it's probably a fairly wide margin to second place.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason the Pac-12 is a conference of champions, and it's because of the Olympic sports. Right.
And Stanford.
Yeah, like Stanford, like Cal,
yep.
like UCLA has.
USC.
They all have I mean, even Oregon, man. Like, Oregon's won a tumbling national championship. Oregon's won a golf national championship. Go Ducks.
Oregon's arguably the most successful football, basketball, softball, baseball programs combined, all three of those in the country, which is the Big Four.
Yep, it's like that in Oklahoma. Oregon and Oklahoma are like the ones that are good in all four of those.
I mean, Alabama's up there because they've got a good softball team. And
I actually saw an infographic today about that. It was specifically college football and basketball. And Oregon was number 2, I believe, to Oklahoma. And but if you add baseball, softball into that, like Oregon stays there, Alabama's going to drop, Oklahoma's going to stay because they're unbelievable.
Alabama's got a good softball team, but they don't have a very good baseball team. Yeah, they're all very good athletic programs. And so to see Stanford get left out of this is a little disheartening. Like, the whole thing just sucks, man. Like, the Pac-12 dying. If you're a college football fan, you should not be rooting for the Pac-12 to die. You truly can't call yourself a college football fan if you think this is good for the sport. All of this. Now, we are too far down the road, so as an Oregon fan, I'm like, you have to do what you have to do to stay alive, basically, at this point. Same with Washington. You know, Washington State head coach, totally blanking his name. It's on here because we're going to talk about it. That's right. Dickert. Jake Dickert had a press conference today where basically he was bemoaning the death of the Pac-12 and how sad it is, and the state of college football is being run by TV deals, and that's not really what college football is all about. Like, he's saying everything that we all feel, and he's obviously in a position at Washington State that he doesn't have a whole lot of say in the matter. But it sucks, man. Like, it's like, as much as I don't like Washington State fans, and as much as it's fun to make fun of the little brother up there in Corvallis, like, I don't want those teams to just be left behind. Especially like Oregon State now, like, finding some consistent success. They finally figured it out at head coach again. You know, they got a brand new stadium all built up, and they're about to just get left in the dust and be part of the Mountain West, basically.
Yeah,
it really sucks.
It's really sad because it's like the Oregon State rivalry is, like, first of all, like one of the oldest in the country in the sport, right, in football.
Yeah,
and it's relatively even throughout history. I mean, they've played like 120 times or so. It's like unbelievable amount of times, and to make that an out of conference game sucks. And they're gonna keep it alive, but also that kind of sucks because, like, that's like a hard game now, you know. Like,
it's a hard game, and it's also like it takes away from the variety of your out of conference stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
Like Colorado, having Colorado State on the schedule every year, while I like it, it's like then you only get 2 games that vary from your conference, unless you're the SEC. Right? It sucks. There's just no two ways about it. The whole thing sucks. And I don't know what it's going to become. You know, the Mountain West has 12 teams right now. The way that we just talked about it leaves 4 teams remaining from the Pac-12. That's Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, Washington State. I don't see any other way other than those 4 teams merging with the Mountain West to form, you could call it the Pacific Coast Conference again. I don't think they would stick with the Mountain West moniker because that is so lumped with Group of 5, and they wouldn't want to do that.
Honestly, like, probably what is likely is the merger would happen towards they would frame the merger as upward movement, right? So they might even keep the Pacific
or
Conference.
Pac-16.
Yeah, they might. Yeah, but it's just a merger. It's the Pac-16 now, even though there's only 4 OG teams in it. Like,
yeah. Well, and you could do that, and there's rumblings of like Stanford could go independent. Yeah, they can do that in football. You can't do that in any other sport.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me that Stanford's athletic department's just going to go away, you are on crack.
Yeah, it ain't.
It's not.
It ain't gonna happen.
So They have to frame it as the Pacific Coast Conference. They would probably try to jump it up to 20 teams, right? So you'd have those 16 teams, add SMU, add a couple others in there, and they would probably just try to float it on up. They would get a decent media rights deal. Like I saw a Reddit post from a Washington State fan who's just all woes me, which I don't blame him.
I don't blame him at all
because I have a lot of sympathy for him. But he was like, you'd be going from making $20-something million a year down to $4 million. He's like, no, you're not just going to take the Mountain West you're going to get a new media rights deal.
Yeah.
It's just not going to be in the $30 to $40 million range. It's going to be in the 20 to 25 range, which it gets you to be the fourth best conference.
Sure. Yeah.
And honestly, if you're Stanford and you're Cal, who don't like throwing a bunch of money at your football team and aren't fully invested in your football program, that's kind of hard to say with how much Stanford was spending on Dave Shaw, but you know what I mean? Like they're not hell-bent on having a top-tier football program.
Yeah.
That's not the worst thing in the world. Fourth best conference. That's not the worst thing in the world at all.
Yeah.
Maybe fifth best. Like they probably dip below the ACC actually at that point. So they're the fifth best conference. But you're still like if we're still talking Power Five,
yeah.
And in an era that you're moving to 12 playoff teams, if I'm Stanford and I'm looking at, I'm like, oh shit, I don't have to get past USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA anymore. That's
that also raises up a team like Boise State, who's been really good
100%.
at football and has very much to the chagrin of Duck fans over the years been very vocal about how they should have a chance at playoffs all the time. It gives them a shot. Now you're playing in one of those conferences where it matters. And
there was some hoopla about the Big 12 adding Gonzaga as a basketball-only school. Pacific Coast Conference, do that right now.
Yeah.
Right? Just like swoop in there, grab them. It's not exactly a position of power, but it's not total poverty either.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's like, I'm not seeing like, the more I go into this, I'm not like, this is absolutely the end of the line for Oregon State and Washington State. It's relegation, and it's not good for those programs, but it's not the end of the world. And actually, it may allow them to be more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, it'll help them. Like, they don't have to run into juggernauts, right? Like, they won't have to do that basically week in, week out,
Yeah. Yeah. So while it all sucks, I think there's a path out of this that's okay for all parties involved. Bonus for us, like road trips to Oregon games are going to be hella fun in the Big Ten. Man. Road trips to CU games are going to be hella fun in the Big 12. Like, there are some sweet-ass venues that we get to go to now.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not all bad. It just, like, it sucks that money's ruining the sport, I guess, is where I come from with that.
Specifically TV. Money.
However, I do want to point out, our good buddy Chris tweeted today that if the Pac-12 is truly dying, that means the end of the Rose Bowl, right? Which is a sad thing for everybody. But can we just come to a consensus as the college football world and make the Rose Bowl the national championship game every year?
It's got to, man. You got to do it.
And then beyond that, make it so all of the other playoff games are on campus. Just get rid of the bowls.
I like some bowl games.
Well, keep them separate from the playoff, though.
Oh, yeah.
I don't need the Sugar Bowl being a semifinal. I don't need that. It's not what the Sugar Bowl is. Keep the bowls, keep bowl eligibility, right? Perfectly good with that. And the New Year's Six can even stay. It's just not going to be quite as prestigious as it used to be. All the playoff games on campus, can you fucking imagine waking up on New Year's Day and watching 4 college football playoff games in a row on campus?
Okay, just think about this. Think about like the most iconic stadiums out there. Death Valley in a night playoff game.
Dude.
Chills.
Even a day playoff game.
Yeah, it will be unbelievable, dude. The Swamp, if Florida ever gets back to prominence, the Swamp in a playoff game? Are you fucking kidding me? This would be dope.
Autzen.
It's I mean, yeah,
The
I'm
Shoe.
trying. The Autzen.
Well,
I'm
the
like,
Shoe,
the Shoe,
the Big
Camp
House.
Randall. Like unbelievable, and like that would be a really good way to balance out kind of the soul leeching that this is accomplished in college sports right now. Of like, yeah, the Rose Bowl.
It would bring all of the like magic that is college football back.
Yes, exactly.
All of it.
I will. Sure, I'll say this. I would gladly accept the Rose Bowl being less prestigious to get playoff games on campus.
100,000%.
Yeah.
But the Rose Bowl should still be the national championship.
Yeah, totally.
It's the granddad, like you guys, like TV, you are totally blowing up the college football landscape, college athletics landscape. Bring back some of the magic that is college athletics. Give us playoff games on campus. Give us the Rose Bowl being the most important event of the year. Just throw money, and you can throw, if you're college football and that's what you're doing, right? Like if this is a college football thing, throw a shit ton of money at the Rose Bowl and make that venue, just make it what it should be.
Yeah.
Make it a top tier venue. Keep it open, keep it huge, but give it all the upgrades it needs and just make that it every year. I want that. It should happen. I want it bad.
That would be so sick, dude.
I want it bad. It's not going to happen because there's too much money in the other venues and shit too, but that would save this whole thing for me if they did that. And could you imagine the revenue on campuses and stuff if they had a playoff? Like if Oregon gets to host 2 playoff games,
it'd be unbelievable.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine what those tickets would go for.
God, can this just happen, please?
Make us commissioner and we will fix it.
We'll get it done.
We'll put teams where they need to go. We will make sure that everybody gets TV rights. Like TV rights should be college football TV rights, not conference by conference. Right?
Yeah.
We're going to go back to regional. We're going to make the playoffs hosted at stadiums on campus, and the Rose Bowl is going to be the national championship every year.
Be so sick.
And for those of you Alabama and Clemson and Florida fans that are bitching about having to fly to LA, go fuck yourself. I don't care.
Oh no.
LA's
we have
easy
to fly
enough to
across
get
the Mississippi.
Yeah.
Get fucked.
Yeah. Shut up.
Get fucked. Get
USC and UCLA will be real happy about that.
Yeah, man, that'd be sick. Let's do it. We're commissioners of sports. That's what it is.
It's gonna happen.
We did it, gang. We did it.
I love it. I mean, it's not fun. All of this is not fun, but there are some outcomes of this that A, aren't nearly as bad as what some people think it will be, and B, could be really cool if they do the right stuff.
Yeah, I saw a poll, and I'm interested to hear your take on it. I think I know your take because it's probably the same as my take. But it was, would you rather college football revert back to 2007
I saw this.
or be what it's going to be in 2027?
100 million thousand bajillion % go back to 2007.
To the BCS era?
I don't care about is it saying that keeps it or that's the conference alignment?
No. It is how college football was.
Oh.
So like,
I thought it was
if you're
just
going
talking
back,
about like
no,
the
if you're going
conferences
back,
being
no,
the
no, no,
conferences.
no, I 100,000% it's 2007. But like, would you go back to
Oh, in that case,
2007? But it's
no, I would not.
BCS because I could never do BCS again
No, I
after
would not.
playoff.
I would not do that. I like the direction of the sport in terms of the playoff and everything. I like where that's headed. Do I love the way that NIL has played out and all that shit? No. Do I think that they're going to get it under control? Probably. So no, I'd rather it be where it's going to be in 2027. Mostly because the further I look into this, I don't think teams like Oregon State and Washington State are going to be in total disarray.
Yeah.
And I think the prospect of Oregon and Colorado playing new competition and stuff and kind of getting a fresh start is kind of exciting to some degree. So no, I think the direction is better than it was in 07. But if we're talking just the way the conferences were in 2007, I would go back to that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So give me the conferences in 2007 and the model of 2027.
I'd love that. That'd be great. Wouldn't we all love that? So Tugboat finally joined the chat. He says,
"Sup, dude?
Sup, fellas." We say, "Sup" back to you.
Yeah, that's realignment. It's going to be a whirlwind. I saw, who was it? Wilner on Twitter today saying that the Pac-12 is basically has 24 to 48 hours of before its future is decided. Yeah. It's looking
pretty.
We're looking like the what is it? The doomsday clock. We're like 15 seconds to midnight for the Pac-12. It's not good.
Yeah.
If you're the Pac-12. And I blame absolutely zero. Like I'm seeing a lot of people be like, what is George Kliavkoff doing? It's like, no, guys, what are you talking about? He was given an absolute lemon and has done everything he possibly could do to make it right. And
just because Larry Scott ruined the market value.
Oh my God. I saw somebody on Twitter today say, this isn't Larry Scott's fault. I was like, are you Larry Scott? You must be Larry Scott because in disguise. Because nobody in their right fucking mind would say that.
Yeah. So apparently Oregon posted a uniform picture or a recruiting picture. I
saw this.
And it does not have the Pac-12 logo on it.
I saw this. I think it was a practice thing, and one of the beat reporters replied at some point and said they've always had two sets of practice jerseys. One of them has it, and one of them doesn't. This is nothing new.
Oh well, I was excited for a second there. Well, I just want news at this point. Like I'm tired of sitting in limbo.
Oh, this just was posted. The Big 12 executives have approved Arizona as the 14th member.
Yep. That's
happening tomorrow. Cool. Because
sweet.
If we're looking at the timeline of Colorado, it was Colorado's regents met, Big 12 approved them, Colorado's regents met the next day and voted to move. So I would imagine by this time tomorrow, Arizona will officially be in the Big 12.
Well, that's fun. It's exciting, everything's dying and burning in front of us. It's great. Love it so much. We're having a good time.
The really shitty part of this for Big Ten's offer to Washington and Oregon is expected to be 35 to 40 million annually.
I'll take it.
I don't think this is even remotely.
That's more than what they would make on the.
Like Oregon just gets to be like, Phil Knight's going to be like, you're going to do this. I'll fund your like new travel expenses because you got to go really far.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to 2030, when that deal expires, you're going to get full membership and it will be fine.
Yeah. It'll be totally fine by then.
Yeah. You take that in a fucking heartbeat. If you're Oregon, like you don't even think twice. because if Arizona bolts, it's all bets are off. We said that from the jump with Colorado leaving. Colorado leaving wasn't necessarily the final nail, but it was
Essentially the final nail.
They need like a hair to tip that scale and make it just totally crumble.
Yeah.
And Arizona leaving is it. That's it. That is it. All right. Let's move on to the Washington and Washington State preview. This is going to suck a lot.
I don't want to do it.
Oregon fans,
quit the podcast.
Buckle up. This is going to not be fun for you.
It wasn't fun for us.
It was really shitty doing the research. It's going to be really shitty saying it on the airwaves.
Yeah.
And I'm just airing that out.
Like non-biased when we're analyzing things.
We are very obviously Oregon fans. Like, we're not secretive about it. We went about this as objectively as we possibly could. And I think that's going to come across in how we talk about this team. It's going to be very similar to the USC. So. It's going to be very similar to the USC preview. And so let's just jump into it. Recap of 2022. Washington Huskies finished tied for second in the pack at 11-2 and 7-2 in conference. Best win easily was at Oregon. Worst loss was by far Arizona State, which I have no idea how that happened. That kept them out of the Pac-12 championship game. It kept them out of a potential playoff berth.
Yikes.
It is just unfathomable how they did
At least, I'm going to be Oregon fan here. At least Oregon only lost to teams that are good.
Yeah, they didn't have the random, like, Utah losing to Arizona and UCLA.
Yeah.
UCLA kind of makes sense, but
yeah, I mean, DTR
losing to Arizona, not good. And Washington losing to Arizona State, how the fuck do you do that, man?
That program was in ruins. Still is. It's gonna get better, but
ruins. Yeah. So that's by far the worst loss. Kept them out of the playoff. Kept them out of the Pac-12 championship. So I guess good for us. If you're looking at statistics, it was good across the board. Offense was second in scoring, first in total yards per game, first in pass yards per game, sixth in rush yards per game, first in third down percentage, ninth in red zone touchdown percentage. That's all in the Pac-12, not in the country. But top two offense in the Pac-12 only because USC existed.
Yeah.
Really nothing else to say there. Michael Penix Jr. is an absolute animal. Total career resurgence after multiple injuries at Indiana.
We'll get to him.
I know we will. I know, but I was talking about the offense, and I had to do it.
Don't start getting all chummy with Washington before we are required to be chummy.
I'm trying to.
You son of a bitch.
Objectively,
you son of a bitch.
Oh, I hate it. Don't make me turn in my fan card after this, because it's, first of all, not happening. Second of all, we've got Oregon next week, so I can redeem myself.
Okay, well, you fucking better.
2 weeks from now. Defense wasn't phenomenal, but it wasn't bad by any. Like, USC had a bad defense, right? Yes. That was the whole talking point for us. This was not the case. They weren't great. Like, they weren't a Utah defense, for example, but they were solid. Fourth in the pack in points per game allowed, third in total yards allowed, fifth in pass yards allowed, third in rush yards allowed, ninth in interceptions, tied for seventh in fumble recoveries, third in sacks, tied for ninth in defensive touchdowns. So that's a top half defense, probably a top 3 or 4 defense in the Pac-12 overall.
Yeah.
Really good all-around team. However, if you're going to look at a place to knock them, especially on offense, it was that they relied almost solely on chunk plays. They were not a grinded out type team.
Yeah, so they were one of the worst teams not only in the Pac-12 but in the country at like short yardage plays, right? Like basically, if it like, and this is kind of like Kalen DeBoer's thing is trying to get people deep and like basically playing on levels, right? And so they basically play every down like it's third down. And so they just like they're basically just fucking slinging it all the time. And so they were one of the best teams in the country at longer yardages, at 10+ yard plays. But outside of that, they were pretty shoddy once it was like on shorter yardage plays.
I mean, they were great at third down percentage, right? First and third down percentage in the pack, but ninth in red zone touchdown percentage. They just couldn't do a short field.
That's what it is. Basically, what happened is, like I said, they play every down like it's third and long, and they basically their outside receivers like to go deep or to that second and third level, while their inside receivers stay low and stuff like that. And it's meant to spread the field. You hear about spread offense a lot, and that usually means kind of the spreading horizontally, right, through from sideline to sideline. But what they do a lot, and what Kalen DeBoer did a lot at Fresno, is they spread the field vertically. And once that compresses down into the red zone, all of a sudden those safeties don't have to drop back another 10 yards because the people can't get past them that yardage. All of a sudden that spreading vertically doesn't necessarily work anymore. Right. And so you see that a lot in teams like this, where especially in like this kind of hybrid air raid, once they get into the red zone, basically if you score from the 25 out, because if you get tackled inside the 25, your offense doesn't work anymore. Like the whole strategy behind it doesn't work anymore, and you have to change something. So,
yep.
And Washington didn't really have, like, their receivers are top tier, don't get me wrong, but like they're not these huge physical dudes who are going to like muscle you to the ball. Right. They can high point you, they can outrun you, they out route you, but they're not like big body position dudes that are undefendable in body position. So, it's one of those things. They don't really use a tight end that well. So,
yep.
Yeah.
100% agreed. So, like, to recap the season, Michael Penix Jr., talked about him briefly. He really broke out into superstardom after transferring from Indiana, where he struggled with some injuries. He showed flashes at Indiana, but nothing on this level. I mean, he threw for 4,641 yards, 31 touchdowns, 8 picks. I mean, his stat line is crazy, crazy good. Completion percentage, 65.3%. He was off the charts, and he has rightfully been named as a preseason Heisman hopeful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I'm going to say this. I know it's going to be bad, but I've been a fan of Penix Jr. since he was at Indiana.
So have I. Actually, we both talked about him on this show when he was at Indiana.
One of the most electric plays I've ever seen. I don't even remember who they were playing at the time. It was overtime. He's up the sideline running, and he like dives out. I think it's when he like hurt himself. And he like tries to dive it out, and he just barely nicks that pylon to win the game. I was like out of my seat, and I could not give
physics.
2 shits about Indiana football.
This is what college football does to us, ladies and gentlemen. If you're new to the show, we could be watching Indiana Northwestern, and a play could get us totally out of our seat.
I get hyped. Oh my god, I'm so. We're in the month of college football.
23 days.
And I can feel it. Feel it in my bones. It's like I don't know. It's like I'm being slowly filled up, and my life is gaining light. I'm ready for the season and just explode forward, ready for football. I need it.
For what will be like we announced like what 2 months ago that we were going to become a Pac-12 centric
Oh
kind
my
of
God, yeah.
podcast, and the whole thing's just gonna fucking crumble.
Dude, is it our fault, dude?
Did we do this?
I know we've had.
No,
okay,
we
here's
can.
the thing.
I can't.
You know what? I'm gonna say it, Jamie. If it's our fault, I'll take that, because you know what else we've done? We got Mark Emmert fired. We got Larry Scott fired. We got
Not soon enough, apparently.
not quite soon enough, but you know, like we were on like a hiatus from the playbook to the Just Two Fans podcast. It happened pretty quickly after we started telling him to go fuck himself.
It did.
So I will
Very
take
vocally.
I will take the crumbling of the Pac-12 for all the good we've done for college sports. You know, because here's the thing, viewer and listener, is you can't appreciate the sunny days without a little bit of rainy days. All right. So this is a dark time right now, but it'll make us appreciate the playoffs this season so much more. So much more.
I'm going to derail us from the Washington preview for a hot second.
That's fine.
Because
I'm fine
I
with that.
completely forgot to mention during our realignment talks what Torsten brought up in our Twitter. And I said, don't worry, it's our first story. And I fucking didn't make it our first story.
Of course not.
So I'm going to go back to this because there was just so much breaking news tonight about Airs. Like, we just kind of got into it. I forgot to talk about the story today that broke that, and this was in the LA Times, so this is like a legit story, that USC was one of the biggest hangups about Oregon and Washington joining the Big Ten, because they were vocally against it, because they don't want to have to compete with Oregon in the LA market.
Because Oregon owns LA.
I just can't believe that story, like, and USC fans today are freaking the fuck out.
Good.
Man. They are freaking out. USC tears because, like, who's your daddy?
Yeah, for real. I mean, it's
who's your fucking daddy? You are US fucking C, and you are quaking in your boots because Oregon is joining the same conference as you again. Holy
because Oregon
shit.
dominates your city. I was seeing something the other day that, like, out of like all, there was like, you know, a bunch of was it every 4-star and 5-star is a compilation of like the 4-stars and 5-stars out of LA. Like, a lot of them went to different schools, but the vast majority of them, or you know, the highest percentage of them went to Oregon. And then it was USC. Like, USC was second in LA. So I get it. I mean,
which means
who's your daddy? I like it. Like,
who's your fucking daddy?
I love USC tears.
I just love that was a full-blown story today.
Yeah.
And USC being like, suck it in the Pac-12, good luck drowning, and now you're just like absolutely shitting a brick because Oregon's about to join the same conference as you again.
The beginning of the football season, the lead up to the football season, like I said, it's filling me up. It's warming my bones. You know what else warms my bones? USC tears.
Yep.
It just fills my soul to the brim.
It is the spice of life, my guy.
I will let the hate flow through you to me, and I will be just a happy camper as we get to football season.
I just could not believe that I was reading that in the LA Times.
Quaking.
I was just like, I kind of knew it, but to like know that USC was like, don't add Oregon.
We don't want to compete
because we don't want to
them.
recruit against them.
Because
that is insanity.
Well, it's like, you think about, like, it's like they have to, like, they wear like these old stuffy uniforms that don't change. They have the traditional.
They play in an old
traditional
stadium.
uniforms. They play in a shitty stadium. Like, okay, we've been to the Coliseum. It's a cool experience. It's a shitty stadium.
Because it's the Coliseum.
Yeah, it's a shitty
But, like,
stadium.
it's not a good game day experience.
No, and like the fact that, like, we
and it's in Compton.
Well, I don't even care about that. The fact that there are temporary bleachers that other people sit kind of behind, this is D1 college football. This is one of the most storied programs in D1 college football, and you have temporary goddamn bleachers, and then other people have to sit like catty corner to that?
I want to clarify my Compton comment. I don't care that it's in Compton, but the fact that we couldn't find parking, so we missed like half the first quarter of that game. And we finally parked at like this parking garage, and when we went out to dinner afterwards, they were like, "Where'd you guys park?" And we told them, they're like, "Yeah, don't go past the building you parked in because you'll probably get
There
shot."
was a stabbing a block away from where we were. Anyways,
not exactly a luxurious part of town.
Yeah, no, it's not Beverly Hills. That's for sure.
100%. Which is where we were staying.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, man. It's wild. It's wild. I mean, but yeah, like, of course they're quaking in their bed.
I just loved it.
You have to go against Autzen Stadium, which is a beautiful stadium in a beautiful area, and it's loud as fuck, and the fans are crazy. Like, they get cool uniforms. They sometimes miss, and that's okay. But sometimes they fucking
rarely
nail it.
It's a rare miss. It's a rare miss.
But then you've got the fucking Islander uniforms, which are the sickest uniforms to ever exist
in any sport of any kind
of all time. I need one. Yeah.
And then you got the 1994 throwbacks.
Yes.
You got.
How do you compete with that? USC can't compete with that.
You don't. You clearly leave is how you compete. And they
know they can't compete for it, and that makes me even happier.
You know the best part about the timing of all of this? USC has 0 vote because they're not in the Big Ten
yet. Yes.
So the Big Ten, while they were trying to listen to USC's wishes, they don't have to listen to a single word that they say.
Fucking hilarious. Go Ducks. Anyways, we should probably go back to.
Anyways, back to Washington. I just wanted to shit on USC a little bit.
Back to Washington.
So yeah, Michael Penix Jr., certified stud at quarterback. I have nothing bad to say about him other than the color of his jersey.
Yeah. Are we doing our preview now?
Purple's a baseball color. Yeah, we're back to it.
Okay. Well, I mean, are we?
Oh no, I'm not. I mean, I'm not done yet.
Right.
So Kalen DeBoer was a freshman head coach at Washington. Not a freshman head coach because he was the head coach at Fresno State before, but it was his first year at Washington. Obviously gets an A+. I mean, I don't know how he could have done a better job other than not losing to Arizona State.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, like you can't really say anything bad about the season. The fact that they only lost to Arizona State, because it's not like they don't have holes on this roster and they didn't have holes last year, right? Like they had holes and they had things that really need, like pretty major things that needed improvement. And he worked around them. Like it sucks because all these people that I like are going to Washington. I like Kalen DeBoer. I liked him at. I didn't think he's as good of a coach as he actually is.
Yeah.
But
see, I
thought he was great at Fresno State. I didn't think he was ready for the Power 5.
I will eat crow.
Yeah.
I will eat crow, and this podcast will eat crow because we were kind of laughing at Washington when this hire happened, and I will totally.
To be fair.
I will completely eat that.
To be fair, the thing that we were laughing about the most was that Washington was thinking they were getting Urban Meyer.
That's true.
And instead, they got Kalen DeBoer. Now, Kalen DeBoer, while maybe not the sexy hire, has turned out to be the right hire.
The right hire,
but
100%.
Like it's Kalen DeBoer is nowhere near the level, especially last year, was nowhere near the level of a hire that Urban Meyer would be. And that's what it was all like, oh, we're going to get Urban Meyer. Oh, we're going to get other legendary coach who's free right now. We're going to get Harbaugh. We're going to, they were all, they were like saying basically like, we're going to get the best coach in the world. And then they got Kalen DeBoer, who's a great coach. And he was great at Fresno State. I didn't think he was ready to make the leap up into, this kind of game. But he proved me wrong there. So
Clearly was.
It'll be
So
it will be interesting to see what happens when Penix isn't there, because Penix is a major
100%.
major driver of the success. So
100%. All right, the key returning and departing players real quick. On offense, unfortunately, if you're the rest of the Pac-12, they're returning most of their star power.
they're returning like basically everyone who mattered in their offense.
They're returning, obviously, Michael Penix Jr. and his top 4 receiving targets.
Yeah.
Top 3 receivers and the top tight end, which were the top 4 receiving targets in that offense, all back. So not good. If you're a Pac-12 defense, that's not good. That is an offense that was great and should get better with continuity and stuff. Now, however, on offense, they are missing 3 interior O-line starters who are not being replaced with a ton of talent.
Man,
but we'll get into that.
Ahead.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying they're not getting replaced with a bunch of talent. They're missing 3 O-line starters. They are losing their top running back, who didn't do a ton last year, but he was solid running back. 887 yards. Also added 225 yards receiving. He was a solid back. And then they are losing their 4th wide receiver, Taj Davis, to Cal, who we talked about last week. So those are key departures in offense. On defense, talking about returning guys, they're returning their 2nd leading tackler in Alfonso Tuputala. He's a linebacker, solid player. Not anything fantastic, but he's solid returning. Asad Turner, safety, is coming back. He's the 3rd leading tackler and had the 2nd most interceptions on the team with 2. Spoiler alert, this team did not take the ball away a lot. And then Zion Tupuola Fatui as a D end. He was 2nd on the team in sacks, and he's an animal. So those guys are returning on defense team in terms of what they're losing. Alex Cook, the safety, is in the NFL with the Giants. He led the team with 82 tackles. Cam Bright, linebacker, is with the Seahawks. He's the 3rd leading tackler on the team. And then linebacker Jeremiah Martin is on the Browns, and he was 2nd on the team in sacks. So they're definitely missing some pieces on both sides of the ball, but by and large, they're returning quite a lot of talent.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the preview here. We're going to start with their recruiting class, which was okay. For a team that finished 2nd in the conference, I would expect that they would have had more success on the recruiting trail, and they just didn't. Overall, it was a 29th overall class and 6th in the Pac-12. In terms of high school recruits, they were 26th overall and 4th in the Pac. And in terms of transfers, they were 46th overall, 8th in the Pac. I wouldn't look into the transfers too much because they didn't have a whole lot of holes that needed filled. But I thought it was a little surprising to me that their high school recruiting class wasn't a whole lot better.
There's always something to be said, I think, about like the incoming coach, especially because he was not an early hire. So I think, getting set up and ready to go is a little tough. And then, just having a whole recruiting cycle. I guess this is his whole recruiting cycle, right? This is his first whole recruiting cycle. But Kalen DeBoer has never been that guy. He's used to Fresno State guys, right? He's not the guy who's going to go get these 5-star guys necessarily, and maybe it takes some confidence building to be able to go get those guys. But especially, I think it's probably hard to commit to like massive recruiting when you have like a really good window right in front of you here with this team. I think it's really hard to be especially, or to sell a team to these guys like, hey, yeah, you're not playing,
right?
You're not going to play this year. So, and
right.
That's pretty much what's going to happen. None of the incoming freshmen are really going to be playing.
So that leads us right into our 2023 position preview. We're going to do this the same way we have done it the last couple weeks because we think it's a little bit better of an overall review of the team and gives us a better picture than how we kind of started to do it. So let's start on offense. Hi, Sam. With
Happy
the
Not
O
Dying Day.
line. Yes.
So, listener, I don't know, but Sam didn't die, like, I don't know, what, 15 years ago today? He didn't die, and so we celebrate that, and he's celebrating with us today, and we appreciate that. Glad to have you here, both in this chat and just here in general, alive. So, keep staying alive. We appreciate that. So, anyways, continue, James.
It is a dope scar to show.
Yeah, it is a dope scar.
Cool scar. I'm sure he'd rather not have it, but it is a cool
it's a pretty dope scar.
All right, let's get into our position previews. O-line. It was an okay unit, bailed out by a great QB a lot of the time. That's kind of my review of them last year. They are losing 3 interior starters, like I said, not replacing with a lot. Could be a relative weak spot on this team, but with Michael Penix Jr., probably going to negate some of the holes that are there.
So as is unsurprising to you, I have thoughts on this. I have thoughts on this offensive line.
What?
I know.
What?
I know. They are returning both of their tackles, which is always a solid start. And both of their tackles are, I would say, above average. They're top half of the pack. RIP pack. But they're top half of that, and so they probably get a little bit better. I think, though, that the interior offensive linemen, the 3 that they lost, is going to be a lot bigger of a factor than some people are letting in, right? Like, it's so one way to interrupt this quick pass, quick hitting air raid offense is to pressure up the middle quickly. And the guys who they've brought in, these backups they had last year who had a limited playing time last year, not good. They just weren't very good. So if they take a step forward to mid, then it's going to be tough, right? Michael Penix Jr. obviously is going to be able to negate a lot of that. But it's like if you are gonna get pressure, and you are gonna get Michael Penix to have happy feet and throw too early and timing be off, pressure up the middle is how you're gonna do it. And this is a good opportunity for other teams. If you see a team beat up Washington this year, it's going to be because of these interior offensive linemen.
Interior linemen. Makes sense. I mean, it's a position that's hard to fill quickly, as we talked about with Colorado last week. It's just a matter of if you have guys in there that have the like physical ability, can they line up and get to the system quickly and then figure it out and gel. Now, like you said, they don't have a lot of talent coming in behind them, so we'll see how this goes. But again, kind of identified this as a weak spot.
This is definitely somewhere where they need a couple people to really step up.
Yep. Let's move on to the quarterback. Obviously, Michael Penix Jr. is the real deal. Legit Heisman candidate if he can stay healthy for a second straight year, which has been his bugaboo in his career at Indiana. But I literally don't have anything bad to say about the guy,
except for that he went to Washington.
Where's purple?
His decision making in the transfer portal was bad. And they also returned their pretty capable backup when Penix got like beat up or like garbage time. This Dylan Morris kid, he's pretty good. He's not Michael Penix, but it's a guy who's going to come in and be adequate enough to keep you in games, win you a couple games. He's not going to blow your brakes off right now, but he's good enough.
Yeah, let's say if they're relying on Dylan Morris for more than a half a game or more than a game, it could be problem time.
Yeah, I would say it's not going to be necessarily like it's not going to be a death sentence. Like he's pretty capable.
Oh, they'd still beat Stanford, but like
good.
if you're playing if you're playing Oregon, USC, Oregon State, Utah, you're in
That's
trouble.
rough. That's going to be rough. Yeah. Like, I mean, we alluded to it earlier that Penix Jr. is the driver of this offense.
100%. And we'll get to the overall in our keys to the season, but
he's the driver.
Spoiler
of
alert,
this
it's
offense.
Michael Penix.
And being like, it's without him, this is not the same team.
I mean, in college football, that's kind of how it goes, right? With the exception of some of those Alabama and Georgia teams that are just so good across the board that you can hide a quarterback. If your quarterback goes down this day and age in college football, you're basically done.
Don't tell that to Oregon State fans from last year, man.
Unless, well, again, like there's anomalies.
Yeah, they were definitely an anomaly last year.
Yeah. Running back. Another position that doesn't have a whole of talent coming into the season. They don't have anybody that can replace Talapapa both running the ball and pass blocking. Like, they just don't have that guy on the team.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, I think where they're going to miss him the most is in pass blocking. Because, like you said, he was good. Talapapa was a good running back, but he was a great pass blocker. He was very good at picking up blitzes, finding the weaknesses on offensive lines. When it happened, when the breakdown would happen, he would be there. And so they're returning Cam Davis, who basically during his time at Washington has been plagued by fumbles. And like they brought in a couple guys, Dylan Johnson and Daniel Nada, who are both fine, but like neither of them is going to be none of these guys are going to be able to pick up a blitz like Talapapa did. And so like one of my concerns with Washington this year is they had a great year last year, is the blocking for Michael Penix Jr. has gotten worse. And that's not necessarily a great recipe. I mean, they have, like, I mean, spoiler alert, we'll get to the wide receivers, but, like, Penix and the wide receiver duo are unbelievably talented and good, but it's really hard to pass the ball when you have 350-pound Mongoloids in your face. Like, when you have a 300-pound dude who runs a 4.5 40 in your face, like, that's tough to throw the ball that way. So blocking is a really big deal. And they have gotten markedly worse at blocking. And who knows? Maybe Cam Davis, maybe one of these guys steps up and they really take on this blitz pickup, this pass blocking running back role. But if they don't, like markedly worse protection for
struggled with injury throughout his career. It's
Yeah.
not. It would be. I'd say like don't sound the alarms, Washington fans. Like I wouldn't say like this is, oh crap, we're going to regress type situation, but it's definitely something to watch in the early games, early schedule. Like
it's going to be the reason that if they drop a game, it will be the reason is because of pass blocking.
Well, I mean, if you're looking at their splits, it's not like it starts easy. You start the season with Boise State, so it's not like you're getting, South Dakota in here or something like FCS. You're starting right out the gates, then Tulsa, and then you have to go to Michigan State. So it's not like this team has a whole lot. They just have to figure it out and figure it out fast.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Wide receiver position. This room is absolutely stacked.
Yeah.
Returning all three starters.
Yeah.
Anything bad?
It is like the top two, Odunze and McMillan, are possibly the best duo wide receivers in the country. They're really up there. Like these are both incredibly talented dudes. And it shows in their stats and stuff because basically after those two, there's a really, really, really big drop off in stats and all that kind of stuff to get to their number three. And so, and like losing Taj Davis to Cal is tough, but like it's not going to have that much of effect because you have your top two who are just unbelievable. And you have some backups who are good. And if you got a 3-man system and you have all 3 back, you're doing all right.
Yep. All right. Tight ends, solid room, returning both major contributors. They don't use their tight ends a ton, and these tight ends aren't going to beat you in most cases, but it's not like this room's going to be a liability for you on offense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's a pretty bad room. But like I said, it's after you have your 3-man operation, your 3-headed dragon with Penix, Odunze, and McMillan. You just don't really need a whole lot else. One of those 3 guys is going to make a play, and so having Westover, because Westover's pretty mid, right? Like he's not a good tight end.
Yeah, he's certainly not a stud.
Yeah, he's not a stud. And he's going to be underutilized in an air raid offense, which traditionally doesn't have tight ends at all. So it's a pretty bad room, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Yep. Agreed. All right, let's move on to the defense. Start with the D-line.
The D-line. My guy, let me pull up my notes real quick. Okay, here it is. They have a decent starting interior line. A couple guys who are, fine, but their depth is very, very poor. So I would expect that you're going to see Washington fans. I would expect you should expect teams to run the ball up the middle over and over. Because what's going to happen is with the lack of depth, your top 2 guys are going to get real tired, and it's going to look great at the beginning, and it's going to start really hurting you at the end. They're going to start getting chunk yardage. Edge rushers are both very, 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 very good. So last year, Washington ran with a kind of a 4-man rotation. All 4 players were like pretty incredible pass rushers. And they lost 2 of those guys. And so it'll be interesting because they haven't really replaced them. They've got a couple interesting guys here, but they haven't really replaced these 2. I can't remember their names off my top of my head. But it's going to be interesting to see how they adjust to only having 2 really fairly elite pass rushers as opposed to having 4. So that's my thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much on the exact same page as you there. So I don't have a whole lot to add on the defensive line. Attacking core, it's okay group, as I mentioned in my departing and returning. They are losing 2 of their top linebackers. Okay group, nothing to write home about. They'll be serviceable, but not gonna blow your doors off.
Yeah, I mean that pretty much sums it up perfectly. You got a solid group of guys. I don't really think they're gonna blow a game for you. Like Tuputala is like a really good player, but he's not gonna be, a top. He's not gonna be a top linebacker in the pack. So they're not really going to lose you games, but they're not going to be the guys who make the plays that win the games necessarily. I think that's a pretty mid group. I think probably top half of the Pac-12, but not super high up in that top half.
Yep.
So this is fine. They'll be fine. They're not going to be a liability, which is what you are looking out for.
Right. While the linebackers might not be a liability, the defensive back room might.
Circle gets the score.
This was probably defense last year, and it's going to continue to be that into this season.
Yeah, especially at the cornerback position. The cornerbacks are pretty rough. They got shelled last year a lot. They just got shelled, these cornerbacks, and really they only got marginally better this year. With Jabbar Muhammad came in. I think he's going to be better. Is he again? Is it going to be good? I still don't think it's going to be good. But they do have pretty solid safeties. Their safety position isn't bad, and so that'll help these pretty rough corners. But this is definitely the weak point of this team. I would say of the whole team. Well,
that's probably true.
The tight end room is probably the weakest, but like again, we
kind of
talked
very
not impactful. This is going to be a problem for these Huskies.
This is going to be a massive, massive hole.
Yeah.
For this
that cornerback, those
sure.
cornerbacks are going to be frustrating to watch at times if you're a Washington fan, I think.
I won't be frustrated.
I will love every second of it. But we're trying to keep our personal opinions out of this.
Keys to the season, if you're Washington, Michael Penix Jr. times like 1,000,000. He is the end all be all of Washington football right now. So at 10 goes.
Yep.
If you're looking at the other side of the ball, obviously there's guys that need to step up on that defense that didn't last year. The offense is going to be fine. I think if we're just looking at this as a whole, the defense could lose them a game or two.
Yeah. I mean, the real key to the season is keeping Michael Penix healthy. Because, with Michael Penix will be able to make up for all the weaknesses you have in the defensive backs room, right? Like this team is going to it's gonna be very reminiscent of like early 2000s late 2000s Duck teams, where you like the philosophy is kind of you don't need a defense when you just outscore the other opponent. And so there's going to be times when they don't score perfectly well, right? There's going to be times when the O-line has a bad game and Michael Penix gets hit a lot and he doesn't throw very well. So I expect them to drop some this year. They're going to drop a game or two here. Like I haven't looked at their schedule, so I haven't truly looked into that. But I think they're going to drop a couple games because of, interior offensive line and this defensive back room.
Yep. So overall, I'd say close to the same as last year, with maybe an additional loss in there, as you said, because of the secondary and that interior O-line.
Yeah, I would say, very reminiscent of Utah, where they're probably the same amount of skilled, and they're probably just as good as they were last year, but other teams got better. And I don't see Washington particularly have gotten better. So
other than like Michael Penix Jr. with the continuity in the wide receiver room, like those guys may be better, which is scary. Because they were already ridiculous. Yeah. But the rest of the team, there's certainly to be determined how they were filled, but on paper they will.
Yeah. So I'm not expecting regression out of this team. I'm expecting them to be pretty much the same like they were last year. Like we said, the trio is going to be probably better, but there's also places where they're worse this year. So even out to about the same as they were last year, but other teams have gotten better. So I'd expect them to drop another game this year.
Yep, agreed. All right, before we move on to Washington State, we need to fix whatever's going on with my video feed in the stream here. So we're going to take a short break, and we will be right back. I mean, literally like a minute or two. So we'll be right back.
Don't you go nowhere. And we are back. Told you it was going to be quick.
We told you. Hopefully that fixed my video feed there. I'm not sure what was going on, but we do still have to talk about Washington State. One quick thing right before we get into this, and I hate keep coming back to it, but I have ESPN on, and the leading story that took about 8 minutes for them to get through, which in ESPN time's a long time for SportsCenter, was Arizona is expected to leave the Pac-12 and join the Big 12 within the next 24 to 48 hours. So I think we're just well on our way here, which we talked about, but it's just becoming more and more official at this point.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the dominoes look like from that. But the Pac-12 is just in dire straits right now, and it's going to be an interesting next couple weeks as we sort through this. All right, let's get on to Washington State preview. I have not been secretive that I don't think this team's going to be very good at all. And we'll see how that turns out at the end of this. I'm going to make you guys listen to figure out where we fall. Recap of 2022 is very Washington State type season.
Very Washington State.
Finished seventh in the pack at 7-6, 4-5 in conference. Best win by far was at Wisconsin. Came out of nowhere. Was really like the beginning of Cam Ward for Washington State, just like the rise of him. And that team was looking pretty good to start the season. Then the wheels just kind of fell off.
They definitely started out hot, and then they kind of got figured out.
Yeah. That said, it was a great win. Started 3-0, almost 4-0. They arguably should have beat Oregon in week 4.
That was a pretty bad loss. Like, we're talking about bad losses here. That was a bad loss on their part. They should have won that game.
That was a stressful ass win for us Oregon fans. But yeah, it was very up and down from there. Had a really rough stretch with USC, Oregon State, and Utah in back-to-back weeks. And they actually held their own in 2 of those 3 games. So it wasn't all bad for Washington State. It was just kind of meh, which is what that team just generally is in the Pac-12. If we're looking at their worst loss, it was Fresno State in the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl. They got their doors blown off 29-6. It was their lowest point total of the season.
Yeah.
To Fresno State. It's just not good.
I mean, Fresno State was a good team. Don't get me wrong. Shouldn't get your doors blown off.
Yeah, but they scored more points on Oregon State, Utah.
Yeah, no, it was a really bad performance.
Like, it was a bad performance. If we're looking at their statistics, 9th in scoring in the Pac-12, 11th in total yards per game, 8th in pass yards per game, 9th in rushing yards per game, 10th in third down percentage, 2nd in red zone touchdown percentage. So pretty bad, just overall. Yeah. If you're just looking at that, it's kind of amazing that they won 7 games. Defense, however, was 3rd in the Pac-12 in points per game allowed, 5th in yards allowed, 10th in points pass yards allowed, 6th in rush yards allowed, tied for 3rd in picks, tied for 3rd in fumble recoveries, 4th in sacks, and tied for 2nd in defensive touchdowns. That is an anomaly for a Washington State team.
Yeah. I mean, rest in peace to Mike Leach, but that defense was not his strong suit. And
that is for sure.
And so seeing a really stout Washington State defense, we talked about it a lot last year during football season. Their linebackers were just unbelievably good, and it showed in the draft. But it's weird to see. It's kind of the same with like Oregon too, where it's just like defense. We're a defensive team now. Okay,
how did this happen?
I guess we're doing this,
But it worked for them, clearly.
It did. Yeah, they won 7 games. Like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, again, Jake Dickert. It was Jake Dickert's first season at Washington State, and again, just pretty par for the course. Just looked a little different than we were used to it looking.
Yeah.
Um, if you're looking at their schedule, they won the games they were supposed to win. They lost the games they were supposed to lose. They just kind of were there.
They were
in the
a
Pac-12.
team in the Pac-12.
They are bringing in a new OC this upcoming season in Ben Arbuckle from Western Kentucky. Continuing that air raid offense, but it's going to be a little more high-powered, a little more explosive, I think, than they were last year.
I mean, if you know anything about Western Kentucky, you know that they offense. Like, that's what they do. They offense. And
they offense, and they only offense.
I mean, pretty much, man. The Hilltoppers are known for just absolutely lighting up the stat sheets and scoreboards.
True. It's very true.
And so they bring in Arbuckle. I think that's a great hire for, especially the roster that they have. I think Ben Arbuckle is a 100%. Great hire.
100%. So let's go to key returning and departing players for them. On offense, you've got Deshaun Stribling as a wide receiver. He was their leading wide receiver last year, and he departed for Oklahoma State. Also losing a wide receiver. They're losing their top 3 wide receivers, actually. So they're losing Robert Farrell, who's an unrestricted free agent in the NFL. And then their third leading receiver is Donovan Ollie, left for the University of Cincinnati. And their fourth leading receiver,
top 4
Renard Bell. Their top 4 receivers are all gone. So while we're talking about this offense getting fresh blood in there at coach, gonna have to find some more production in the wide receiver room. Defense, they're losing Deion Henley. We're talking about that linebacking core, certified stud. He's on the Chargers. Yeah. He led the team last year with 106 tackles. Ooh, that is a large number.
That is a big number.
Also contributed 4 sacks and a pick. So he was a stud. And then they're also losing their best defensive back, Armani Marsh, third leading tackler, second in 2 sacks and a pick also. On offense, they're returning Cam Ward at quarterback. Serviceable quarterback. Pretty good. Showed flashes of brilliance. Also just left you scratching your head at times.
Really unorthodox throwing motion, very unorthodox footwork. It was very clear that he was at an FCS school the year before.
But as a general rule of thumb, if you're returning your starting quarterback in college football, that's a good thing. They are also losing their leading rusher, Nikhil Watson, running back, 769 yards, 9 touchdowns. On defense, they're losing Jaden Hicks, strong safety.
Returning, right?
Oh, sorry, yes, returning. Safety, Jaden Hicks, and defensive end, Brennan Jackson. So they're bringing back some talent. That wide receiver room getting absolutely decimated, which we'll talk about here in a second. Moving on to the 2023 preview, got to start with the recruiting class. As is to be expected with Washington State, this is not pretty.
Yeah, they don't recruit. And really, how could you? If you've been to Pullman...
It's not that they don't. I'm guessing they try real hard. It's just
how can you recruit there because it's fucking Pullman?
You can't. It's the 71st overall class, 12th in the pack. It is the worst recruiting class in the Pac-12 overall. They had 0 4-stars or higher.
And they haven't. I looked this up a while ago. They haven't had a 4-star since 2018.
I think they had 1 in 2022, but before that, you're right.
I don't think they did. You might want to check that. I'm pretty sure they had 0.
Well, Cam Ward was a 4-star transfer.
That doesn't count.
So I guess if you're counting that, you're right. They don't have a 4-star high school recruit since 2018. That's correct.
Wild. A Power 5 school didn't have a 4-star.
I'm guessing there's more of those than you would like to think, but
Yeah.
yes, it's not a good sign
Nope.
if you're a
Again,
Power
though,
5 program.
how do you recruit to Pullman?
You don't. And that shows high school recruiting. They were 63rd overall, 11th in the pack. And transfers, they were 62nd overall and 11th in the pack. Just not a good. It's not good.
It's not good.
Who was worse than them? Was it
Cal.
Cal? I think it was Cal.
Or Stanford.
Yep.
It's pretty bad.
2023 Pac-12 overall. Washington State's worse. Recruiting class high schoolers. It was Cal.
Weep womp.
And transfer class, it was Stanford.
Cool. Nailed it.
I wonder they're not getting invited to the Big Ten.
You can't come with us. You can't sit with us.
2023 preview by position. Let's start with the O-line as always.
Okay.
I said mid at best. They're going to struggle here with depth. They're going to struggle everywhere with depth, I think. But really on the O-line, that hurts when you struggle there.
Yeah. This offensive line is actually really interesting to me. Their interior is going to be fine. It's a solid group. They were pretty good last year. They're going to be pretty good this year. The big question mark here is what are their tackles going to be like? They lost. Did they lose tackles? Yeah, they lost their starting tackles, and so they've got some backups who weren't very good. They picked up some dudes. There was one guy. I can't remember which one he is. I think Essa Pole, whatever. Who just started playing football in 2021. He's a basketball player. He's like 6'7", and just a big dude. And so it's like when you get guys like that, because he's gonna be quick, he's big, he's gonna be quick. It's really, you gotta question. He's either gonna be awesome or just totally inept. And so it's gonna be really interesting to see how this offensive line develops, because there's a very low floor and a very high ceiling for this offensive line, I think, which equals out to be they're probably going to end up being fairly middle of the road. But it'll be fun to watch for us offensive line nerds. Oh my God! So I was watching the Kelsey Brother podcast, and Cameron sent me this TikTok.
I did. I'm surprised you didn't bring this up
and
earlier.
it was Jason Kelsey sitting there talking about alignments and how stupid
what
they
you're
are.
Talking about.
And then at the end of it, he goes, somebody out there knows. I was like, me. I know what he's talking about. How fucking stupid it is. Anyways. Offensive line nerd.
I thought of you. I can't believe I didn't send that one to you, but I saw that. I was like, oh my God, I know he's got a Parsh at his house.
Yeah,
right now.
I love that. I love that. I'm a part of something, Jamie. But he's right. He doesn't miss in that segment. So, but
Tugboat immediately thought of you.
So if you're an offensive line kind of nerd like I am, this is going to be actually really fun to watch to see how these guys develop and end up, because the interior guys are solid experienced dudes, so you don't really have to worry about them, and so the outside is going to be very weird and fun to watch.
Fair enough. Let's move on. Quarterback Cam Ward, we talked about him briefly. Serviceable quarterback, got a fairly low ceiling, at least especially compared to the other guys we've talked about in this conference. So competition's high. He's serviceable. There's some room for growth, but as you kind of briefly mentioned earlier too, it's kind of like he got figured out as we got through the season. And kind of that magic he brought early on was not quite so magical towards the end of the season.
Yeah. So I said last year, when he was getting hyped up as oh, he's going to come in and be this amazing player in the Pac-12. I was like, I think he's going to be pretty mid. And he started off being what he was hyped up to be.
On fire.
Yeah, and then he really did fall into being mid. He has a really bad throwing motion and footwork.
It's like hard to watch sometimes.
It's hard to watch sometimes. And he makes really dumb decisions on the field, but he does have a really high talent ceiling. And one thing that I really like about this hire with Ben Arbuckle as the OC is he has been very open and very hard on Cam Ward about, like, he's like, I am so shocked that there hasn't been a coach who's changed his throwing motion and his footwork, because he gets happy feet, right? Like he's like, who's corrected any of this stuff. And a guy who has run an air raid offense knows how to get a passer to do that. So I actually think Cam Ward might have a pretty decent season this year. I think we're going to see a market improvement from Cam Ward with Ben Arbuckle giving him the business and holding him accountable. Because it sounds a lot like nobody's really ever held him accountable because he's been such a good athlete.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all good in theory, right? But once you start messing with guys' mechanics, it can go one of two ways. They can take it and run with it and do really well, or it can just absolutely tank them. Cue Tim Tebow.
True. That's very true. So it could, but I don't know. I just feel it seems like this is the right fit of a coach for him.
I think you have to try, right? Like they don't have any other choice. So
well, and really
you gotta do your best.
The scheme here. Well, we'll get into this in a little bit even more, but like the scheme here is more important. Yeah. So I think we'll see an improvement out of Cam Ward this year. But if he does go down, buckle up, Washington State fans, because it's gonna be bad.
Just pack your bags and head right to the Mountain West half a year early.
Well, Cam Ward is a serviceable quarterback, and I think he'll actually end up being good. You know, one of the problems is we're comparing him to the Pac-12, which is the best quarterback conference in the country by far this year.
By a country fucking mile.
And so he's getting compared to these really, really great quarterbacks, and so we may be judging him a little unfairly just because of the relativity around him. But like, after Cam Ward, there's nothing. Jalen Jenkins
it's
is
not
set
a
up
good
as their backup,
overall.
and he was abysmal last year when he played. So, yikes.
I actually see John Mateer.
Mateer? Sorry. Yeah, you're right. I was a line down. John Mateer, the backup, who was really bad.
After Cam Ward, they have a redshirt freshman, and then two true freshmen.
Who was the one who came in last year?
Which, if you're looking at their recruiting classes, I don't know, but if you're looking at their recruiting classes, redshirt freshmen and true freshmen are not going to be good.
Yeah. No, whoever his backup
like
was last
UCLA
year. I thought
playing,
it was
what's his
John
name?
Mateer, but I got to be wrong here.
Yeah,
whoever his backup was last year, whenever he kind of got dinged up, and I was just like, oh, this dude's bad.
Yeah, not great. I guess I could probably pull up stats and figure out who that is. One moment, it was Nick Haberer.
Who's not even on the roster, so it's
Nope. It was John Mateer.
It was John Mateer. Okay, so it was John Mateer. Yeah, he was a bit.
Two pass attempts.
Yeah.
So nobody really played other than Cam Ward. Let's talk about the running back room. Not used a whole lot. Nakia Watson's a good fit, and this offense should be fine.
I think that Nakia Watson in this system is a fucking waste. Because Nakia Watson is a really good running back. Really, really good running back. But he's going to be underutilized, especially in the new air raid that they're getting. And they've got a couple solid backups, but it's Nakia Watson's field.
Yep. Wide receiver room. Obviously, they're missing their 4 top wide receivers.
They lost something like 70% of their total production out of the wide receiver room.
Yeah, it's insanity. So young group, obviously inexperienced because they didn't bring in a whole lot of transfers at all.
Well, they did. They got 3 transfers coming in, all of which are juniors, all of which are fine. So, like I kind of alluded to this earlier. One thing about the air raid offense is you don't need crazy talented wide receivers, right? The thing about the air raid offense is it's so reliant on schemes and execution that you do not need necessarily. You don't need a Devontae Adams to succeed, to be a good wide receiver in an air raid offense. You just need to be good enough, right? Like you just need to be a guy who can run the route that is assigned to him and create a little bit of space. And so I think they got that. They got guys who are good enough to run the offense well. So I don't think they're totally boned here. I think they're going to be about the same they were last year at the wide receiver core, maybe a little bit better actually.
It's reasonable. I think that's fair, 100% fair. I just logged into our YouTube and Chris has been commenting on there that hasn't been coming through our feed.
Yep,
weird.
I know. I did the same thing.
Super weird. Tight end room basically doesn't exist. I don't know that there's even much to really say here.
Fun fact about the tight end room is that Washington State didn't even list tight ends as a position until 2021. It wasn't a listed position. They were just big wide receivers.
That says all you need to know about the
I literally didn't even look at this group because they're not going to be used at all. It's just not. I mean, this is so much more of a traditional air raid offense. If they're used at all, it's going to be blockers.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, there's pretty much nothing to talk about here, essentially. So let's move on to the D-line. Let's see, my notes on the D-line. Outside rushers should be pretty good. Nothing crazy again. There's not a whole lot that's going to be crazy good on this team in general. But this group's okay on the outside rushers. Inside could be a problem with depth specifically.
Yeah, I agree with you on the outside rushers. I think they're going to be kind of the highlight of this defense. They were pretty productive last year. I think they're quietly really productive last year. And they do return a lot of that talent that was quietly good. But yeah, you're right. The inside is gross. They lost both their starters to graduation. They did add a few solid players like Naeem Rodman from Colorado, who looks to take that starting role. And we talked about in the Colorado episode that Colorado had a decent interior line, and so they got a decent player here. It's nothing to write home about. But I really do think that I think sneakily they're going to have one of the better outside rushes in the Pac-12. I think
they're
going to be a top 3 or 4 in pass rushing.
Yeah, it's just a matter of if those inside guys can keep up.
Yeah, overall their line is going to be pretty mid, but I think their outside rush is going to be really good.
Linebacking core, obviously we've mentioned it multiple times here. They had a sneaky good group last year, kind of came out of nowhere, it felt like.
It did come out of nowhere. They were all new starters, and they were all so fucking good.
Yeah, but they did lose most of their production at the linebacker spot. They're replacing with 2 transfers who are okay. There should be a pretty significant drop-off in this group this year, I think.
I think this is actually one of the bigger backslides in the conference this year, is this linebacker position. They had the best linebacker core, or the best linebacker duo in the Pac-12 last year. And we talked about this last year during the season. Like, these guys were just like, you didn't hear about them, but they were just fucking good. And I don't think this is going to be an awful unit. I think they got some guys who can play, right? They got Ahmad McCullough and Devin Richardson. And these guys can play. They're not going to be total liabilities, but this is still, I mean, they're going to be, they're going to be mid-bottom tier of the Pac-12 at this unit. So I'm not really expecting a whole lot out of them.
Yep. Agreed. Defensive backs, depth continues to be a problem, and this is a position where you need depth. Let's see my notes. Starting safeties will be decent. Cornerbacks could be a liability.
So I have I think the starting corners are going to be fine. But like you said, depth is going to be a hard issue here.
Yeah, I think the starters are okay on the outside. Like they're serviceable. They're not going to absolutely get torched all the time like Washington's might.
Yeah.
But if there's any injuries or anything, or you start getting rotations, that's where you could see a big
that's gonna be a real big problem, especially when they try to bring out like a nickel as well. It's gonna start being an issue. Like they return one of their starters from last year and their primary backup from last year, who were all fairly solid. Well, he was fairly solid. So I mean, I don't think they're going to be like super bad. I don't think they're going to be super. I think there's going to be kind of there. I don't think the cornerback room is going to be a real difference maker either way for this team. The safeties are really interesting to me because they're like total fire and ice, right? You got Jaden Hicks, who is a great player and a great tackler, a great safety tackler. Yep. And then on the other side of the ball, you got Sam Lockett, who's like maybe the biggest liability on this team coming back, and he seems to be still in the starting role. Like I remember his name from last year, and that's not a good thing when you're a defender in the Pac-12. Like, generally, it's either a really good thing or a really bad thing. And
in this case, it's really bad.
So I just remember him getting burned. I think if I remember, like he was like what happened in the Oregon game is that Bo Nix started shredding Lockett, and that's
he did lead the team in picks, but.
Here's one of those things where I feel like stats can be a bit misleading, because if you're thrown at 35 times a game and you get burned 10 times, but you pick off one of them, you got to pick, right? Like, so I think a stat can be misleading here. My only memory of Sam Lockett from last year is just being torched a lot. So
Yep. All right, keys to the season I have develop, and see how quick they can gel with the new offense.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Development is key here, and implementing Arbuckle's offense in an efficient way. Right, you don't necessarily want to do it quickly; you want to do it efficiently. Is going to be key here.
Yep. Overall, I'd say my analysis of this team is it's going to struggle. It's kind of the same with Utah and Washington. They've stayed pretty much the same in my mind. I think they may take a step up on offense, a step back in defense, and they're just going to kind of be there like they were this year. The problem is the rest of the pack has caught up and or passed them. So, I don't think it's going to be a whole lot different than last year, other than I think they may find some more results that don't go in their favor.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we've been putting these from last week. We put teams into tiers, right? We had we had USC. I can't remember our tier list exactly.
Utah,
USC, and
USC, Utah.
Yeah, we had Utah, and I put these guys kind of in that Arizona, Colorado tier where it's like there's some potential here to win games. There's also a lot of potential to lose games. Just they're going to be fine. It's not going to be the worst thing you've ever seen. There's going to be flashes of absolute brilliance. Like, I mean, really, truly, that Oregon game from Washington State last year was their flash of brilliance. They didn't get to pull it out, because they're just they just weren't as talented as Oregon was, right? And they weren't as driven at the end. But like you're gonna see flashes like that out of this team where you're just like, wow, why aren't they winning more games? And then you're gonna have moments in season where you're like, how did they win any games?
Yeah. You're right with the tiers. Arizona, Colorado, Cal, they're in that range. Colorado, we were talking about this when we're trying to do our top 10, because we now have 10 down, 2 to go in the Pac-12. Colorado's such an anomaly in this because they could go up as high as fourth or fifth in the current rankings and as low as 8th. And so it's like, where do you put them and where do you put Washington State relative to that? So is all kind of grain of salt. We kind of put Colorado on the lower half of that potential just because there's so much unknown. So if we're looking at our top 10 with Oregon and Oregon State to come, we've got USC, Washington, Utah, UCLA, Arizona, Cal, Colorado, Washington State, Arizona State, Stanford. With Oregon and Oregon State to come, I would anticipate that both of those teams probably fall in the top 4. We'll see what that looks like once we've done the analysis.
Yep.
Sorry. That was random and out of nowhere. So yeah, that's Washington State. That is probably the last time you're going to hear me talk favorably of Washington
ever
for a very long time. So Washington fan, you're welcome. I know you're not listening because there's no way you follow this podcast. But that's going to be a solid team. Washington State's going to struggle. It's just kind of how it's been and how it's going to continue to be with those schools. Got any final thoughts for us?
I don't, but I do believe it is your buzzer beater.
It is my buzzer beater. We'll be back in 2 weeks to do our Oregon and Oregon State preview.
Yes. And so, listener, I just want to let you know that we love you. Viewer, we also love you. We're glad you're here joining us live. But we're just happy to have created something of a community, and we appreciate you guys spending time with us and listening to our takes. And this preview has been a lot of work for us, and we're just glad that you guys are receptive to it, and have had a lot of fun conversations about it. Thank you to Zeta June for letting us use your music. It's really awesome of you guys. Thanks to Tugboat for giving us these overlays and producing for us when he's sober. And yeah, I think that's it. Did I miss a thank you, Jamie?
Probably, but I think you got them all.
Cool. So with that, Jamie, hit us with that buzzer beater.
My buzzer beater for the week, because this was so gross to do this week, is Dubs down, bitches.
Deuces.